Hello everyone, my name is Ville Manninen. I'm from the University of Jyväskylä and I study trust and trustworthiness in online journalism. Next, I will tell you a bit about my research on the reasons why online journalists choose to use particular sources. I have been interested in online journalism for a long time and it eventually became the topic of my PhD thesis. I was especially interested in the question, is online journalism any good? Since sourcing is a crucial part of the journalistic process, I decided to begin my scrutiny there. For this study, I visited 7 major Finnish newsrooms. This includes some of the country's largest news dailies, as well as the public service broadcaster Yle. I observed online journalists as they researched, wrote and published stories. After observations, I interviewed the journalists over the choices they had made. One of the first things I noticed was that online journalists work at an incredible speed. One of the journalists I observed wrote 27 stories during one work shift. Naturally, such a pace requires a highly streamlined sourcing process. After observation, I asked the journalists to explain each source decision they had made. The answers can be divided into 5 categories, which I call discourses of trust. These discourses have distinctive patterns of temporality, typical sources, and underlying influences. The first and most obvious discourse is that of ideological trust. When articulating ideological trust, the journalists treat the source as something beyond all suspicion. For example, one interviewee said, "If you can't trust the police, I don't know whom you can." Surveys show that the Finnish people have strong trust towards the police and rescue services. In my study, they seem to be unquestioningly trusted also by journalists. This kind of trust is very robust and will persist between news events. This trust discourse may well be the most common one. Journalists use this discourse when they explain various practical reasons for choosing a source. For example, being conveniently available or being an established authority on the matter will increase the appeal of a source. The less work a journalist has to do in order to find, vet and contact a source, the better it conforms to pragmatic trust. This kind of trust can be affected by both how journalists do their work and how sources make themselves available. In some cases, journalists feel that a source does not need to be trustworthy. Cynically pragmatic trust can hardly be called trust in the normal sense of the word. Instead of trusting the source to be truthful, the journalist simply trusts that it is publishable. For example, a politician's words may be worth attention even if they are suspected to be lies. Cynically pragmatic trust is similar to ideological trust. The reigning ideology in a society dictates whose statements are important in and of themselves. This kind of trust can also apply to other media. Here the blame for incorrect information can be shifted onto the source, who also happens to be a competitor. Consensual trust applies to situations where a source's information matches the information from other sources. Forming it requires at least some work, as the journalist has to check at least 2 different sources. Of course, consensus among sources does not guarantee truthfulness. In my study, consensual trust practically always involved media sources. And unlike in previous 3 discourses, consensual trust is temporary. It exists only within the context of a particular news event, because different events involve different information. Forming contextual trust takes the most effort from a journalist. It involves considering various aspects of the source and the news event, and then considering whether the source is trustworthy in this particular situation. Contextual trust mainly relates to sources that journalists feel are somehow suspicious, such as ones with political or financial interest to safeguard. Many different factors can influence contextual trust, and it only exists in relation to a particular news event. Studying the ways journalists rationalize their source choices can be illustrative. It may reveal blind spots resulting from ideology or simply from the lack of time. In Finnish online journalism, unfortunately, sources appear to be selected largely with only superficial consideration. That's all from me. Thank you for your attention. If you would like to read more on this study, it's been published as an article. If you are blocked by a paywall, feel free to contact me for a free copy. You should also be on the lookout for my upcoming research, this time focusing on the audience's perspective.